Okay, we'd now like to welcome on a very special guest. Amy O'Connor is here. She is a co-founder of Humboldt Social. Uh, so, Amy, I'm not sure if you know this, but we actually talked about you on a recent podcast when we discussed the Scotia Lodge, and I received a ton of questions about Humboldt Social and who you are and what you're doing. So, I'm super excited to have you on today. Thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, I listened to the other podcasts and I heard so many things where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to go on and answer some of these questions or clear up some of some of the confusion maybe.
Yeah, there's not many things that get past me in Northern California, and I had just not heard about you guys. And as I started doing some research, you guys are doing some really cool stuff. So tell me a little bit about Humboldt Social and how you're sort of creating these unique experiences.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that was so funny on the last episode of the podcast was you were talking about Humboldt Social. Like, we went to their website. They don't have social media. Are they real? Are they a shell company? And I was listening to it and I was like, I have to work on the website. Because Humboldt Social as a company and as a brand is relatively new. We've been in the business of hospitality for about 8 years now. A little bit longer than that if you consider sort of Airbnb experimentations that my husband and I were doing. And we've been doing that we started that about 10 years ago. And our first major public venture was Humboldt Bay Social Club, which is, I think, how we continue to be known, because that is a boutique hotel, only has 4 rooms, a bar, a restaurant, a big outdoor grilling, picnic, fire pit area with an event venue. And then we also have beachfront cabins across the street. And so that's the business that we're most known for in Humboldt.
And that's located in Eureka, correct?
It's located right outside of Eureka on the Samoa Peninsula. So we're right on the shores of Humboldt Bay and we look across to Eureka. We can actually see Pop and Barkley Social sort of from Oyster Beach, which is the beach part of the property. So we've been doing that. We're coming up on, so we opened that in 2018. And then but this year we've branched out into these other ventures, these other locations. So we opened Pop and Barkley Social at the beginning of in the spring. We just opened Scotia Lodge in July, and we're working on our cannabis brand, Social Nature. So doing all those things, we realized there's only so long you can say this project by the people who brought you Humboldt Bay Social Club. We had to create an overarching brand. And so we've done that, but we've also been so busy that we haven't really spent the time to do the things that might clear up some of the confusion about who we are, like creating an Instagram page and all those kinds of things.
Sure. No, it makes total sense. So you started off in sort of the hospitality industry and up in Humboldt. What did you always have a plan to move into some cannabis businesses, or was that sort of just an idea that came off with the legalization of cannabis and whatever, it's been a couple of years now?
Yeah, so we definitely didn't intend to specifically get into cannabis. I think mainly because if you live in Humboldt, we have our traditional legacy farmers, and they're the true experts, right? They're the holders of the knowledge. For decades, they know the land, they know the plant. And when legalization happened, we definitely saw a huge influx of venture capitalists and folks who really didn't know anything about what it's like to farm, who had never experienced, getting raided, had never suffered from being incarcerated for cannabis-related crimes. And so we didn't want... I think we have a real sense of protectiveness of Humboldt and of Humboldt farmers. And, outside investment can be really helpful. Legalization is incredibly expensive. So I think we're struggling right now as a region with how do we welcome this investment and some of these new ideas, while also making sure that our traditional farmers are not pushed out, right? We're seeing that right now. The bottom is dropping out of the market for cannabis. Prices are so low that, we're some local journalists and activists are even saying like this could be an extinction event, right? Could be cataclysmic for our industry. So, we're really struggling with that and want to make sure that we're allied with the folks that have been doing the work, right? And have been farming and have really created this region and supported this region for the last several decades, if not more. But the way that we got involved was we had an oyster bar and an all local tasting room in Old Town Eureka called Humboldt Bay Provisions. And we ran that, we opened that because we felt like there wasn't a lot of really progressive or innovative visitor serving organizations in Humboldt. We had seen models in other regions where, you walk in and into a visitor center and it's just gorgeously designed and super informative. And certainly in Humboldt County, the visitor centers were a little bit more old-fashioned. And we really wanted to have a place where visitors could come in and not just pick up a rack card, but taste some of the wine that we make here, right? Or book a tour to go kayaking right there, or find out about local accommodations and actually have iPads where you can make your reservation right there with our help. And so when we created that space, we had this idea that it'd be really focused on visitors, but we ended up having a very large local clientele. People were just coming over for happy hour and hanging out, and they were taking meetings there, or they were just celebrating events or going on dates. We had one guy, we were his first date spot. So we met all first dates.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. He was famous. But something that started to happen was farmers were coming in, and as the news of legalization was coming down the pike, we would just talk about it at the bar a lot, and farmers trying to figure it all out and navigate it. And at that point, my husband and I had been involved in local small business and economic development. So while we are not farmers, we know how to get a permit, right? And we know how to navigate, in our case, a small town politics, and okay, who do you go to get this paperwork? And we were informed about how the county and then the city, the local jurisdictions were defining regulation, how was that working out? And so my husband, John O'Connor, started doing some consulting for a number of different farmers and upstart cannabis companies, helping them work through all the compliance. And then through those relationships, we started learning more and more about the industry, and then ended up doing this partnership with Papa and Barkley, and then partnering with a number of women-owned and led cannabis farms to create our own brand of cannabis products.
You talk about sort of legacy farmers, and I think that's fascinating. Is there sort of some blowback to people wanting things to stay the same, or has there been acceptance with this cannabis tourism within the legal market?
I think there's a lot of caution, right? That we have a lot of farmers in a lot of our community that really don't want to lose some of the beautiful things that exist in farming communities, right? And that sense of community, that when you're in the traditional market and when your product is illegal, then all business arrangements are based on trust, right? And relational accountability. And there's a sense of family that comes with that. It's not perfect, right? All families have their drama, but I think there's a real fear that is justified, that when legalization comes in, relationships change, communities change. And I think we definitely see the economic impact of that change. And I think it is the responsibility of folks that are coming into the industry now that it's legal, but weren't connected to it before, to earn trust and respect, right? And to pay homage to the ways that this business has been run previously, and not just run in and be like, all right, we're a startup, welcome to Silicon Valley. We're going to do all these cool things and educate you, country bumpkins. And so I think if folks come in and they have one, money, two, useful knowledge, and they want to barter basically with those of us who have been here for a long time, and then there's some really amazing partnerships there.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing that you have to sort of wade through, right? With money comes different people, comes quote unquote gentrification, right? And I know some legacy farmers who would probably not want a bunch of rich people in their Patagonia vests walking around town and throwing money around and changing it. We see it, and we've talked a lot about, the cannabis or the Napa of cannabis, right? That's the Emerald Triangle, the Humboldt area. And I'm sure, Napa had some growing pains as the wine industry sort of exploded. But it's, from my perspective, it's going to happen either way, right? You have legalization, and you have this area known for its cannabis. At some point you have to embrace it, but at what point does it go too far? And I think that's going to be fascinating to watch over the next couple, decade or so.
100%. I mean, I think there's many ways in which we want to be the Napa of cannabis, in the sense that we want to see a hospitality industry that recognizes our farming community and recognizes cannabis as a real draw to the region. And for a long time, I think we've had a good old boy network of folks that own hotels, and then we've had our farmers, and there's been no recognition of the relationship between the two. And I was like listening to your podcast, and one of the things we often say is, like, at Scotia Lodge, if we're known as a bud and breakfast, then our business model has failed, right? Because when you go to Napa, when you go to a hotel, you don't walk in and it doesn't reek of booze inside. Right? And like, people aren't just wasted hanging out. Like, the wallpaper doesn't have to be like prints of wine bottles. Here, cannabis is normal, right? Cannabis is a part of our lives, and it's a part of our communities. So just in that same way, cannabis should be part of our hospitality model, right? You walk in, and I think there's all this weird stigma around cannabis that, like, I get asked questions sometimes that are like, well, do you have relationships with local hospitals? Like, for what? Right? Like, do you ask that of a place? I have a bar. No one has ever asked me if I have a connection with a local hospital in case someone gets too drunk. Like, alcohol poisoning will actually kill you, whereas people get too high. Like, what we have? We have really comfortable rooms where people can go and relax, and like, we can put on music, and we will, if people need company to talk them through, our staff are wonderful. But I think that we need to work for us, normalizing cannabis is, you check into a hotel, and we have our wine list here. We have our list of cannabis products that can be delivered to your room. We have a list of local wineries and hikes and beaches. We also have a list of local dispensaries and farms that welcome visitors. And if you're a connoisseur and your goal for this whole project, this whole trip, is to visit as many farms as possible and taste as many strands as possible, awesome. And if you're here and you don't smoke or in any way, that's okay too. You can all stay at this hotel. I think that's the model, that's what Napa does. Like, I love wine, but I don't know anything about it, right? When I go wine tasting, I'm like, I don't taste oak or smell notes. I don't have a sophisticated palate, but I love wineries. They're beautiful. I love taking my kids. I love seeing the design around. I love good food. So I think Humboldt's that way too, right? You can come here and you can really have a cannabis focused trip, or you can come and have that just be adjacent to your experience.
Yeah, I think you guys did it the right way. When you sort of announced the reopening of Scotia, you had, the pictures of your elegant designs, and, the rooms looked amazing, and it's this historic, experience. But you guys also allow, cannabis use. I think you guys have a specific area for it outside, right? So it was funny because I was showing the pictures to my wife who doesn't use cannabis, and she's like, "Oh, I really want to stay here," right? And so it's finding that niche, and I like how you put it. You know, just because you have a bar doesn't mean you want to just market to the alcoholics out there, right? It's if someone were to stay at the Scotia Lodge, whether they want to be a connoisseur, which I love that word, I think that's the first time I heard it, or just have a normal, beautiful stay on the North Coast, what would the experience at the Scotia Lodge be like?
So starting on October 1st, we're partnering with a local company called Proper Wellness for all of our delivery services. So when they check in, our front desk always asks folks what their plans are, and then offers to facilitate any kind of experience they want to have. Oh, I can suggest hikes. I mean, we're lucky that we're right at the top of the northern entrance to the Avenue of the Giants. So you could be on the Drury Chaney Trail in 15 minutes, right? And you could be even deeper into Humboldt State Redwoods Park in half an hour, right? You could be on the river. And some people, that's all they want to do. They are here for the redwoods, right? And then we would love to hook people up with those kind of trail systems and camping or anything that they want to do while they're there. And then if people are interested in cannabis, then we show them all the products that they can have delivered. And Proper Wellness staff are really happy to talk folks through all the different offerings, and our staff can do that too. And that ranges, right? So one of the things that we've loved about working with Papa and Barkley at the Papa and Barkley Social Dispensary is most of Papa and Barkley products are medicinal, right? So they started out with balms and oils that aren't going to get you high, but they're going to relieve your pain. And so a lot of our guests are older. A lot of our Canna Curious folks are, I would say, like in their 60s and above. And I'm not saying they don't like to get high, but not all of them do, right? And they are really interested in learning about cannabis for pain, cannabis for appetite, cannabis for anxiety, right? So I think that's a fun experience for me. And then there's other people that are like, how many pre-rolls can I get delivered, and where can I smoke them? So right. For now, like you said, our smoking area is outdoors. This is California. It's not legal to smoke anything indoors anywhere. We are in the process of renovating the historic bar on the ground floor of Scotia Lodge, and we hope eventually, we're in the permitting process right now, trying to figure out how to make that an on-site consumption lounge. I find the phrase consumption lounge super unfortunate, but that is what the state uses to say, because not everything, right?
What's your problem with, just because there's other people that are there not to consume?
No, because consumption, like for older generations, consumption is associated with tuberculosis.
Oh, I see.
So it's weird. Like I don't have that association, but we get a lot of people who are like, you shouldn't use that. That's a terrible phrase. So, and I also just feel like it's like clinical, and our spaces are not clinical. Our spaces are casual. They are welcoming. It's not, I don't know, it's not a hospital. It just feels weird. But our goal for that space is that it would be mocktails, right? No alcohol, and that people can consume, whether that's edibles, and I think you mentioned something in the other podcast about making cannabis infused food. That's not something that we do, but we would definitely, our goal, our plan right now is like, we'll make mocktails. And then if folks have tinctures that they want to add on their own, they could certainly do that, but we will not be preparing cannabis infused beverages. We have some pre-made cannabis infused beverages, but it's super important in the state that, servers, producers of cannabis products are very specific about the quantities and the ratio of CBD and THC. Your servers can't do that. That's just not how it's going to work. But if you're an individual, I don't know all of us, but many of us add tinctures to our coffee, you know, or our smoothies. And so we'll certainly welcome guests to do that on their own, knowing their own their own body chemistry.
It's so fascinating to think about, because there's so many ways that this could go, right? We are in sort of the infancy of this canna revolution. You have all these great canna words. I wish I had all these, but you know, we talk about food, and you're right, you know, how do we figure out the wordage of these different things? When I was growing up, you know, my parents would say, oh, he smoked pot, but now it's such a different experience, right? You can take it in so many different ways, and there's different CBDs, and there's, you know, you could do like a CBD bath bomb or whatever. There's so many different ways to do it. So it's just fascinating, and watching it sort of grow as a legal product. It's super cool to watch. What's your sort of envision of the future of legal cannabis and legal cannabis tourism, especially in, you know, the Emerald Triangle?
I think that's a great question. I hope it's more of what we're doing now. And I'm thinking about what you said earlier about gentrification. And I think that's our dystopia, right? I really hope that our future with cannabis tourism is that it remains really accessible and varied and local centric, so that you should not be the cannabis that you consume in Humboldt County should be so clearly connected to the farmers that grow it, right? And that know it. And I think a lot of the fear that people have is that it'll become separate, and that people will consume in an uninformed way, or because I think, you know, for those of us who consume cannabis, one of the things, right, I'll speak for myself, right? I'm a daily cannabis consumer. I'm also, you know, I also have 3 jobs and I have 2 small children. So how I use cannabis has really changed a lot over the years, right? But one of the things that I really value about cannabis is the ritual associated with it. And, you know, I think for many of us, if we grew up smoking joints or blunts, like you pass it in a circle, right? And there's even rules about, right? You always, which way you pass it, and like how many puffs can you take, right? And who's bogarting. And I think that when we created Pop and Barkley Social, and now as we look to Scotia Lodge, we want to make sure that that sense of community and connection with the plant remains. And when we had our grand opening at Pop and Barkley Social, one of the founders of Pop and Barkley, Guy Rocourt, was there, and he was so emotional. He was also wearing a 3-piece suit that was cannabis print. It was amazing. And he's been in this work for a long time, and he was so teary. He said, I never thought I would see the day where we could be doing what we've always done in the shadows out here, right? Out here sitting around couches, fire pits, having the city council members there. We cut the ribbon, you know, Chamber of Commerce came and we did that. And that was, I think that to me is the future of cannabis tourism, is that this whole community coming together and really personalizing cannabis as a part of this region, right? We always say at Scotia, we're in the heart of the redwoods and cannabis country. Like they're just like just like we talk about the confluence of rivers, where what draws people here is our geography, our climate, our people, and our plants.
I like that. I've always said, because we started as sort of this, you know, this outdoor publication, and I always said, like, craft beer goes really well with our audience. You know, it's the same with cannabis. And sometimes it's, you know, some people would prefer cannabis or craft beer. Sometimes, you know, you have two, but I do think it really lends itself to the wilderness, to the outdoors, and especially, I mean, the redwoods. You know. I'm curious about you. Did you grow up in the Humboldt area?
I did not. I'm from Maryland, right outside of DC. I came to the Pacific Northwest in 2005, and my husband and I, we met working for a wilderness therapy company in Oregon. And so the outdoors is a huge part of our lives. It's a part of our family. And I think it's also like a real big part of our mental health, you know, how we, in our professions, right? That we met taking kids out on 21-day backpacking trips and rafting trips, horse packing, climbing, and seeing the therapeutic nature of the wilderness definitely shapes how outdoor oriented even our hospitality locations are. Like we're always trying, we live in Humboldt County. It's one of the most temperate climates in the world. You could be outside every single day. I mean, yes, it rains, but it's never freezing cold. It's never, okay, I can't talk about heat because things are changing, but it's not really, really hot. It's not hot the way that it is on the East Coast or even Central Valley. So, yeah, I think I grew up in an area that was, when I go back home, when I go to DC, I see a lot of business innovation. And I was raised in an urban environment where I was really separate from the outdoors and like where my food came from. You know, I went to the grocery store, and now my kids, like we get our farm share, like we go to the farm, we pick our vegetables, we know the farmer and the farmer's family. And so that kind of connection is definitely what drew me to Humboldt was John, my husband. He went to HSU. He's from San Diego, and his community was really close here. He was very connected to the rafting community and then the small business community. And so when I met him, we were both relatively nomadic. And he was like, so, you know, I got all these friends, I got all these climbing and kayaking friends down south. We were in like the Portland-ish area. And he's like, I think I'm gonna go down there and see if I can start this business. And I had nothing really better to do at that point. So I thought I would come to Humboldt for a couple of years, and then it's been a while. And I don't think we just bought a house. So I guess this is it. I got 2 kids that were born in Fortuna, and I think this is our forever home.
Well, it's good to see like business innovators in these different small communities throughout Northern California and sort of having an outside view of it. And I'm seeing, you know, a lot of really positive changes, not just in like Humboldt, but just all around, you know, Northern California. It's really fun to watch. Okay, last question. So let's say that someone comes to Humboldt, stay at the Scotia Lodge. Maybe they want to go, you know, eat at the Humboldt Bay Social Club. Where are your top 3 outdoor places they should go?
Ooh, outdoor places. Okay. The Malel Dunes, which are on the Samoa Peninsula, about 5 minutes north of the social club, are one of the newer use areas that the Friends of the Dunes has obtained. And those dunes are otherworldly. It's like being on the moon. They're super accessible. So the hike in is like less than half a mile, and then you climb up the dunes. Kids around here sled them because they're that high, and you can just see the ocean, but you're also on this like just lunar, it's like a moonscape. It's incredible. That's one of my favorite places ever. I think in terms of the redwoods, the hike, okay, I love Fern Canyon, but Fern Canyon is a little like Disney World, right?
Yeah.
So you're in the off season, you're there with like 7,000 people, but you can do a longer hike, the Irvine Miners Ridge Loop. It's about 11 miles. It's no joke, but it's through Prairie Creek State Park. So people always talk about the Redwood National Forest, but in my mind, the state parks are really the jewel of Humboldt. So Prairie Creek State Park is right attached to parts of Redwood National Park. But that hike leaves from the visitor center. It goes all the way to Gold Beach, which is just another unbelievably beautiful, very remote beach. You'll see elk. And it goes past Fern Canyon. So if you want to drop in, you can. but you also know that you're like way superior to the people that just drove up doing the super short loop. So
Yeah.
I like a little moral superiority in my outdoor adventures.
Don't we all? Yeah.
Totally. And then there, we have 6 rivers here. We are in the watershed, 6 different rivers. The Trinity is definitely my favorite. And so going out to Willow Creek and getting on the river, whether there are some super accessible beaches, like Kim2 is just very family friendly. But then there's some other spots that are farther up that, I don't know, in Humboldt, it's complicated with your river spots, right? But yeah, I would say, Sandy Bar right outside of Willow Creek is one of my favorite river spots of all time.
I love that area so much. And I do think it is hard to find like specific spots that aren't like, overrun with tourists, per se. So I appreciate a local's perspective on it. Well, Amy, thank you so much for coming on. I really am a fan of what you guys are doing. And I'm fascinated by the whole industry and just localized businesses becoming a part of it and how it's going to sort of evolve over the next 10 20 years is going to be really cool to watch. So thank you for what you do. I think it's really cool, and I hope we can come up and visit the Scotia Lodge here soon.
I would love that. Yeah, bring your wife. She can do whatever she wants. No pressure.
She just wants to enjoy the decorations in your room. I promise. Yes.
Oh my gosh, sounds like my kind of person. Well, I'd love to talk to her about decorations, where they all came from, the history of them. Most of the furniture, it's a mix of furniture. We bought the inn fully furnished, and so most of the furniture in there is connected, but then we brought in some of our own pieces. So it's always fun to like kind of tell the story of each room and where the pieces came from.
Yeah, no, it's again, that's like a super cool part of it. You're not just like a Super 8 motel that you could smoke weed, outside. You're actually like doing really cool stuff. I do appreciate that. I really do. Well, again, thank you for coming on. You're awesome. We're going to keep following you guys and announcing anything. Are there places where people can follow what you guys are doing, or like on social media or anything?
Absolutely. So one, I am going to get Humboldt's social media up and running after your podcast. And, but right now, yeah, you can follow us at Humboldt Bay Social Club, Pop and Barkley Social Nature, and Scotia Lodge. Those are all on Instagram and on Facebook.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on. It was great talking to you.
You too. Thank you.
All right.